Welcome back to Figma Bootcamps. I'm AOA, and in the previous videos, we've explored Figma's interface and essential tools. Today, we are taking a look at styles and variables, which are two very similar tools to help you achieve consistent design across your files. Before we dive in, the technical side of things, let's understand why consistency is so important. Consistent design creates a sense of cohesion. When elements like colors, typography, and spacing, predictable patterns, user can navigate your interface intuitively. Consistency also establishes the brand identity and builds trust with the users. For example, one of these is consistent, the other one isn't. The right one is inconsistent with different type of button, corner radius, color schemes, whereas the left one has a bit of a more cohesive content. However, maintaining consistency like this across two screens is pretty simple. Think about it if you have an app with 50 to 100 screens and the client decides, oh, I don't like this color. I would prefer to have something else or a different font or a different type of corner radius. That is going to be a tedious process for you to go over everything one by one. That's where styles and variables comes in. They serve a similar purpose, creating design tokens, but with different applications and use cases. So we'll explore both and create both. Starting with styles. Styles and variables are living here on the inspector when nothing is selected. You can decide to create or apply a style from any selected shapes as well. Let's take our initial header. Go into our fill and you can see this 4 dots buttons called apply styles or variable. From here, we can decide to create a new element. But this is going to be our primary color. So we'll call that dot primary. Dot primary is a very Swift UI way of thinking. I'm doing this because I'm used to create these things in Swift UI. For you, you might just call that primary or secondary or accent color. One of the recommendations that I have is to not use the color type as the name. If I call that blue and then 2 weeks later, my clients want the thing to be purple, but my style is called blue, that's going to be a bit of a clash in terms of organization. So primary, it's a primary color. It can be changed later on. You can see the color is around here and you can have multiple fields in your style. Let's create this style. It will be automatically applied and you can see that now it has a round bubble compared to the non-applied elements that doesn't have a round bubble. Meaning that now my button right here needs to also take that same style. So I'm going to take or click on the style element and apply primary. What does this do? This implies that when I'm here and deciding to change one of the values, we zoom in a bit on the side, it's going to change everything for everyone. That is one of the power of styles. It quickly change everything. Let's take a look at variable, and we'll do that on this page. I'm going to transfer the cancel button, so Command C, Command V to do that. Don't ask why things are resizing automatically. That is for later. I should have taken both, to be honest, but it's fine. 32 on this, 32 on that. On the radius right there at 32. We have both, it's fine. Let's do the same thing, but with variable. I'm going to take this and create a new variable. So I'm going to name that color slash to organize folders, and then primary. Dot are not accepted inside of variables for many reasons. As you can see, variable do not allow me to get multiple layers of colors. So the difference with the style is that this is going to be a single value, not a multiple stack of values. And create that element, and then if I go into my variables here, if I change this value for something else, it's going to change this. So far, so good. One of the benefits of this is going to be the fact that you can use your variables inside of your styles. If I go there and I say this color right here, then I use my primary variable Nothing changed right now. But I'm still using a primary style right here, meaning that if for some reason I wanted to have an overlay of going from transparent to black on top of my initial thing, I'm now having a gradient going from light color to dark color on both of my elements, something that cannot be done in single viable elements. Like right now, I have only shown you colors. Styles can have text, colors, effects, grids, and viable can have colors, numbers, strings, or boolean. Now, not exactly the same thing, but you can use both for multiple stuff. As in, if I create a new number variable and I say this is going to be my radius small, so radius dash xs, usually how we name stuff, you can then say that is going to be 8. That's my value, radius of 8. Maybe I have another number, which is going to be just s, small, and that is going to be 16. Maybe I have another one of m, medium, and that's going to be 24. I'm using the regular 8 pixel grid right there. But right now I'm only using numbers, which means these have a corner radius of 8. And when you see this cogwheel apply variable, I can check radius and say, this is my radius of 8. I can have that right there. And then maybe these two have a radius of 32. So maybe like the m would be enough. You would have a value of 32 for one of your variables, but the m is going to be enough. So you can use variables for numbers, font sizes, corner radius, spacing, everything, and create a style for your font right there. Create a new style. So let's call that heading. Now I can take this one, which is the same, and say this is supposed to use heading. My subheading is currently at 12, which is not good. Let's put that at 16 and say this is going to be a new one called subheading. And now this one is still using 12, but as soon as I select subheading, you take its value. And you can 100% go in and edit these values to say my subheading is supposed to be not medium, but light. Everything in the background has changed to light, and my heading is not supposed to be bold, but it's supposed to be in heavy or black. As soon as I do that, everything in the background changes. Same thing, it's reusable and defined everywhere. But your main point with variables and styles is to have consistency and just think about it at the beginning of the project and then forget about it. But we've seen that effects are also a thing. Effects are going to be mostly inside of the styles. So let's call that elevation. And now I have my elevation defined. So right now, just using nothing, select my elevation. Let's make sure that this elevation specifically has different values. So maybe it needs to be kind of blue and much bigger, a lot more blur and a lot less opacity. And that's a stylus you can use. In there, same thing, each of the numbers and use a variable. One of the things that is really good with variable modes give you the ability to create or click that plus button and say, well, this is my light mode, for example, and this might be my dark mode. And so in light mode, this is the color that we want. Maybe in dark mode, this thing needs to be darker. Or maybe we want to have a very different color in dark mode. For the sake of the exercise, which is not how it should work, that can work, we consider in dark mode, everything is bigger. So our radius of 8 is going to be a radius of 16. Our radius of 16 is going to be a radius of 24. And our radius of 24 is going to be a radius of 32. And so if for some reason this was in a variable mode, dark, you see that this has changed. And if I had that corner radius set to XS, swapping from dark to light, changes my corner radius and my colors. That's variable modes for you. So now that we understand both systems, when should you use styles and when should you use variables? Styles is mostly when you need to apply complex properties, as in multiple layers of colors, multiple text values, multiple text styles. When you're working with a team that is already familiar with text styles and design system, more traditional than dev, if you need to publish and share design tokens across files, a style is going to be pretty useful. But variables is mostly when you need different modes, like light and dark, or when you need to use the exact same values across different types of style. If you need a more dynamic relationship between the design elements, variables are going to be better than styles. To be frank with you, I haven't used styles since variable have been introduced. I haven't looked back since then, but it's still good to know that it exists. And if you want something that is preset as multiple layers of colors and effects, this is going to be pretty useful. As a massive example of how variables can be extremely useful across files, I have the Mom UI kit, which is one of my creations that is using a ton of variable and variable modes, including something for the accent color. Right now, we're using the accent color, which is green, but maybe for some reason, we wanted to have a violet accent color. You just click one button and everything in our files is now purple. Maybe we needed to be in communication for specific button types like danger or dismiss or something. You can have like communication colors, which for me as a default is the error style. That button that we're trying to achieve right now is not saying this is an error, it's saying this is a warning. We can go back in our variable modes and go into communication. So this is supposed to be a warning button. And now I have stepped into many things. Of my primitive is going to be the dark mode. Maybe it could be light mode. My accent colors, my communication color, and this button specifically needed to be warning. Maybe you know what, this needs to be in pending. Or that specific one was a success. And you can see how quickly I went through the switches, everything in this specific file to get my values to change and update through variable modes and variables. The amount of variables that we have in this file is way greater than the usual. We have 4 modes for our accent colors. For the primitives, we just have dark mode and light mode, but we have a ton of colors. Now that we've done that, let's do a practical example of how to create that. And let's create a card, a container. Let's apply the elevation. So effect, elevation, to this element. As you can see, the elevation doesn't work. Also, I realized I fucked up the name. This is because the fill doesn't exist. We need at least a content inside of our frame to have a shadow being dropped. Let's add a medium for the radius. Maybe we need a stroke that is using the primary, and let's make this stroke that's way more visible than it needs to. And from here, inside of that frame specifically, we need a text layer that is hello. And that text layer is going to take our heading, and then using Command D or Alt, click, drag, we can take this to our subheading. Place it right there. In 3 seconds, we have created an element that will be consistent with the rest of our design, the rest of the design file. Today, we've explored Figma's powerful systems for design consistency and efficiency. Styles, which are mostly when you need complex elements with gradients and multiple layers, and variables that are more flexible for single value tokens across different modes and different styles for the content. Both systems are really good to improve your consistency and your design across your file. To design grow in complexity, these systems and these tools will become increasingly valuable to save you time and ensuring that everything is cohesive. In our next video, we'll build upon one of these concepts to explore the components and auto layout. I think we'll go over auto layout first, which seems more appropriate. As always, if you found this helpful, don't forget to subscribe to the entire Figma Bootcamp. If you want early access to the video files and have access to the project files in Figma, check out the Patreon, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.